לב טהור ברא לי אלוהים, ורוח נכון חדש בקרבי. I am Father Agapetos. Learn how Jesus prayed the Psalms.
Dwelling you water, the hills are drinks fill of your gift.
So good evening. We are together once more for our adventure in the Psalter with another very, very beautiful psalm, Psalm 77 in our Bibles, and which is the last of a group from Psalm 73 to 77, a small group, which we will be able to see the importance of tonight's psalm, which comes at the end of 5 psalms, which begin book 3 of the Psalter. So let me share to you tonight's psalm. So here you have in front the beginning of the psalm, Psalm 77, and you see it has a superscription, and which introduces well to the psalm. So let us listen to it.
למנצח על ידותון, לאסף מזמור.
Okay, למנצח, we found that quite a few times, to him who grants spiritual fortitude, and yedutun is rarely found in the Psalter, and sometimes it's thought of one of the group of Asaph, name of a person, but etymologically, we have yad, which means hand, and tun, 10, right? Given by his hand is, and so we have to him who grants spiritual fortitude, given by his hand, given by God's hand. And so a God who grants spiritual fortitude and given by his hand, and so it speaks about a very intimate interrelationship with God for this Psalm of Asaph, which is what is common to all these first Psalms in book 3 of the Psalter, Psalm 73. So this allows us to, what is going to be this psalm about this spiritual fortitude that God gives by his hand. So let's listen. We have 5 parts in this psalm, and an opening part which is about where the psalmist speaks about his engagement with respect to God, and there's going to be a long last part which is about God's engagement with respect to him and all of us. So this is what's in green, which you see in front of you. So here, let's listen to verse 2. You can see already that you have twice my voice, my voice. In Hebrew, it's koli, koli. And in fact, the whole first expression goes together. So let's listen to those verse 2 with these 2 lines.
קולי אל אלוהים, ואצעקה. קולי אל אלוהים, והאזין אליי.
So, koli el Elohim. So my voice I lift up to Elohim. And etzaka, you can hear in English even the sound. I cry out in this lifting up to Elohim. But then, what's the parallel psalm is parallel line is my voice I lift up to Elohim, and I am granted the inclination of his ear. So here it's the verb which is given, it's the inclination of his ear that is given. And so what it says is that God attends to this dialogue. And so I lift off my voice to a God that attends this dialogue and is going to allow me to continue in the next verses as focused on speaking to God. This is not first, this psalm, a lesson to us. It's a prayer to God. And it's expressed very strongly in verse 2. And then on that, we can go to verse 3.
ביום צרתי אדוני דרשתי.
On the day I am under oppression, sarti, where I'm squished, squeezed, and I seek my Adonai. And so there's this thrust of this psalm is though I'm under a difficult challenge, right? I'm engaged in going deeper in my relationship with God. And here I immediately call now Elohim my Adonai, it means my master, I am your servant, and I seek inside this servant-master relationship to go forward. And then we have the second line of verse 3. Let's listen to it.
ידי לילה נגרע ולא תפוג.
So we have here, and we're going to have during this psalm, quite a few expressions which are here translated with sort of the unease of the translation. And it's giving us images which are very unique. And it starts with my hands at night, so nigra, pour out. And nigra is like pouring, like liquid that is poured. And what does that mean? Well, you could think, also the position of lifting up our hands in prayer, and we're letting our prayer pour out of us through our hands to God. And then we get after lo tafug, and I'm not numbed. That's what tafug means. I'm not weakened in this expression of prayer at night. And pours out it's one of an idea of continuity of my prayer, of constant relation beyond words or moments of where I'm manifesting a precise request. It's a relation of constant pouring out before God. And then my soul refuses consolation. So behind this sort of more outer expression with my hands, I have the inner life of my prayer, right? Where I refuse consolation. I'm in front of God who inclines his ear, and I'm waiting for an answer. And refuse consolation as long as there's no answer. And we're going to see that this is really the challenge with which the psalmist is confronted in this psalm. And therefore, verse 4 concludes this first part of describing my engagement in prayer. So let's listen to the first part of verse 4.
מענה הנחם נפשי, אזכרה אלוהים, ואהמיה,
Okay. And Eskera Elohim, I offer memorial, O Elohim. And Maya, and I moan, I groan. And it's, I'm inside this relationship, which I'm going to develop in this psalm over and over, with the whole remembrance that I have of who my Elohim is, who my God is. And it's inside this experience of my link to God and Israel's link to God, the people of God's experience with God, that I groan, Maya, and the second line.
שיחה, ותתעטף רוחי.
Okay. So you have asicha. We didn't hear it well because I had cut the word. Is I ponder. And another way for, another expression for meditating. And my spirit, titatef, is looking for oxygen, looking for breath. And so there's this paradox in this first part of a very, very engaged turning to God and recognizing His presence, but at the same time that I'm seeking to go deeper in relationship with Him. I am in front of that. I'm not getting answered. Right? He's inclining he has the inclination of his ear is there listening, but he does not respond. And so the psalmist
סלע.
says, Selah, let's stop here. And let's accept that this is, verse 2 to 4, the description of my work of dialoguing with God, with this paradox of, at the same time, this very strong engagement, and yet seemingly that it's not leading me to any response which I'd hope for. And so we get to the second part of the psalm, which is in red, verse 5 to 7, which I'm going to, as the title says here, my pain becomes a meditation. I am going to deepen this form of being in the presence of God, and yet being without response. So how do I do that? So the first line of verse 5 is a very difficult line to translate. Let's hear it in Hebrew.
אחזת שמורות עיניי.
Okay. So there are three words. If you want to take the three words, it's you uphold, you seize, you hold, And then the second word is shimurot, and shimurot doesn't have any other equivalent in the Bible, but it's attached to the same root as shimuro, which is to watch, to make vigil. And in my eyes, as I understand with respect to the whole context of the psalm, this is the best formulation I found. You uphold while my eyes keep watch. In other words, what are you catching, seizing? It's you're seizing this engagement, continue to engage myself towards you and towards keeping vigil over you in my dialogue with you, O God. It's even difficult to express in English what seems to these mysterious words convey. There's something of God who is, I see God in action that as sustaining my vigil towards him, though he does not respond. And so the consequence is the second line of verse 5. Let's listen.
נפעמתי ולא אדבר.
Okay. Nifamti, I am troubled. Again, a very rare word which doesn't exist anywhere else in the Psalter. It's 5 times in the Bible. And so, I am troubled, and I'm really perturbed and unable to speak. So my prayer is beyond speaking, right? And it's a vigil and that you are upholding, but in which we see in verse 6,
חישבתי ימים מקדם.
my meditation goes back to days of old. So, though I don't have any present experience of God's response, right? In my meditation, I go back to Kedem, to how things started. And with Kedem, it's really the days of old, we could say, almost the days of creation. I go back to the first moments in the book of Genesis. And at the same time,
שנות עולמים.
to the everlasting years. And there it's that God is working in the past, in the present, and in the future, and in eschatology. My meditation widens from the seeming unresponse if I just stay in the present moment of my prayer. And my meditation goes far, and that's what we have in verse 7.
אזכרה נגינתי בלילה.
I offer by Laila, my night, with the night song of I offer memorial with the night song of my lyre. So, the song of my lyre, maybe you remember we've met it in a couple of superscriptions. In fact, there are 7 superscriptions in the psalm that have song of my lyre. This psalm. So here it's I offer memorial with the psalm, with the night psalm, and especially one that sings, that is accompanied by the soft tones of a lyre. We saw above, I'm unable to speak, but my lyre is expressing my song. And yet I offer memorial, I meditate, and at the end we have the second part of verse 7.
עם לבבי אשיך, ויחפש רוחי.
With my heart, im nevavi. Asicha, I ponder. So it's the second time we have the verb to ponder. We had at the end of verse 4, the end of the first part, and the end of the second part. I ponder, right? And this time it's my heart ponders. It's deep in me, I ponder. And my spirit, ruach, the spirit, this mysterious capacity of mind in my soul, explores. In Hebrew, it's yekapes. I'm searching with my spirit. So we have sort of a deepening in the second part of my first expression of prayer, which we had in the first harp psalm. And then we get into the very center of the psalm, and which is the heart of the psalm, which I put as title, What is God Doing? And so, what do we hear? We hear 6 times, what is God doing? 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 With sort of a progression of questions. So let's listen in verse 8.
הלעולמים יזנח אדוני?
Okay. Forever has my Adonai forsaken. So forsaken is this great verb, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which Jesus cries out on the cross. And forever has my Adonai, the one whom I serve, the God whom I serve, forsaken. Has he left me with no answer? And we can think of Christ on the cross. And is that going to be forever that this forsakenness is going to be? So we can say this psalm, in a certain sense, is a meditation about developing this, my God, why have you forsaken me, of Jesus on the cross. So, this goes to the second line, right? Which is, let's listen to it.
ולא יוסיף לרצות עוד?
Okay. And there will no lo yosif, there will no more be lirtzot. So I translated benevolence, it's goodwill. We could see even more profoundly, it's the divine intentions, right? Will there be no more divine intentions to be revealed? Again, we can have here, see, this is all the development of Jesus' anguish on the cross. Is God going to go further in his divine designs than this forsakenness? And then we have the third, what is God doing?
האפס לנצח חסדו?
So, and is it finished? Hafetz, ended? Lanetzach, forever? And this time of forever, it's one which is really very strong. It's a complete ending, right? For this and an ending with no start, right? After. So, and his covenant love is this expression of love that is unique to express what God reveals in the Bible as love, and which is never used for any human persons, and which is tied with his covenant for us, through which he expresses his tie of love with us, and uniting us into his love identity. Is his covenant love ended forever. Then the next line,
גמר עומר לדור ודור,
has speaking, Omer, because it ceased from generation to generation. It's not, it would be another word, it would be devaro. Has the word ceased from generation to generation, but it's a very close verb with the same meaning, right? That has God's speaking, and he speaks to us through his word, the second person of the Trinity. Is it ceased from generation to generation? This gift of God as word to us. And we continue with verse 10. And it's good to see in a repetition like this, there's a progression going on.
השכח חנות אל,
So, has El, it's at the end in Hebrew, right? Has he forgotten graciousness? El? El is diminutive for Elohim, which we've had since the beginning of the psalm. Has El forgotten graciousness? And graciousness, it's a good word in English for the Hebrew, which is hanut, and which means his mercy, but also his grace. In other words, the attribute by which he meets us with salvation. Has El forgotten it? And so all finishes with the last line.
אם קפץ באף רחמיו,
So, has he shut off? In be'af, in anger. Rachmav, Ramim is the entrails, right? There's his entrails of compassion. There's his deep meeting with the mystery of our misery. And are we in front of an anger of God which is closing his deepest meeting with our misery? So here we have a second time.
סלע.
Let us stop. Let us receive this heart of the psalm, which is a spelling out of forsakenness with beautiful expressions, which basically take all the different dimensions of God's revelation in the Bible and goes over them. And forsakenness covers all dimensions by which we have been meeting with God. So then we get to verse 11, which is a verse, you can look at it in your Bibles, And it's a verse which is well known to be almost impossible to understand. And so let's listen to it, and I will comment over verse 11 for a little while.
ואומר, חלו תהי, שנות ימין עליון.
Okay, so Va'amar, and I said, and I spoke, right? And then after that, there's haloti. So haloti, as you see in the rest, it's linked to hammering. And for example, in Isaiah chapter 41, we have the hammer. It's another word. It's pitish. But hammers, hulam, it's the same root as haloti. The anvil. We could say the nail. The hammer hammers down the nail. And so hammers down, that's the first word of this sentence. And then after that, there's a mysterious he, which means this, and then there's the right hand of God that is change, and there's change. So if you read most translations in the Bibles, you can see for yourself this verse 11 is a verse which really translators sort of gloss over and just unite it with what's around or whatever, but give it no specific meaning. Yet the Septuagint gave it a very specific meaning and translated it this way. You have it in the margin here. Now I have begun, so I speak, right? And then what do I speak? Now I have begun. This is the change of the right hand of the Most High. And so now I have begun to consider, says the Septuagint, right? The change in the right hand of the Most High. And I think this covers also what can help us understand the translation I gave, is that now what do I begin with this experience of forsakenness to the utter end? It's requiring of me to begin to a new form of apprehension of God and seeing his actions. So I'm looking for, in the depth of my meditation about this forsakenness, I'm looking for a new expression of God. And I am now really hammering, I'm over and over hitting the nail, asking God for his right hand to begin something new, to begin over again, to everything which has already been revealed needs a new start. So this in Hebrew, in the Septuagint, right? It's now I have begun. It's I who have begun, which is not necessary in the Hebrew, but it was translated after into Latin by Nunc Cipi, and this became this little expression, which was found here in this Psalm 77, verse 11, became a central little expression about spiritual life in Western spirituality. Now I start. Now I start again. Now I begin over again. But looking carefully at the verse in Hebrew, it's rather what I wrote. My hammering is for the right hand of Elion to begin over again. I need to see. There's a new revelation of God, which is again, which assumes all the past revelations, right? That is to begin again. So this is a very beautiful work, and how do I develop it? I develop it beautifully with verse 12. So let's listen to verse 12.
אזכור מעלליה, כי אזכרה מקדם פלאיך.
Okay. Eskor eskerecha. It's the same verb in the same tense, right? But one is eskor is a feminine, whereas eskera is a masculine. So I translated, I offer a feminine memorial of the deeds of Yah, even as I offer a masculine memorial of your wonders of old. So there's sort of this total taking all the human scope of faculties to enter in a relationship with God and to meditate on the remembrance of what the deeds of Yah. So behind Yah we have Yahweh. It's already close to it's a diminutive of the word God, which was revealed to Moses at the burning bush, right? The God of revelation. And so I'm entering into this full scope of human faculties in relationship with God. And I think this applies also to all of our personal engagement in prayer. Prayer requires a feminine and a masculine engagement with respect to God in each of us, whatever our identity is. And this is unique in the psalm and in the psalter. We have a lot of expressions, very unique, and that's part of enjoying the beauty of this psalm, is to know we're inside a uniqueness, and we want to open ourselves to this uniqueness. So with this verse 13, it's sort of what is behind this total feminine and masculine openness.
והגיתי וכל פעוליך.
Agiti, and I muse on the totality of the work. In other words, you heard agiti is I go over and over the totality of the works.
ובעלילותיך אשיך.
And I meditate, right, on your accomplishments, on how your works are led to their full accomplishment, their full fulfillment. So here I am hammering in this fourth part for trying to catch something new that can be only possible coming out of this forsakenness. And so then I put as fifth part and end of the psalm a contemplation of what God does. So your incomparable wonders. So what do you read? Let us listen line by line to this development of I am changing from simply staying in my forsakenness to let myself be immersed in who you are, according to the memorial I've repeatedly brought forth. So we hear in verse 14, first line,
אלוהים, בקודש דרכך.
O Elohim, Bakodesh, belonging to holiness, Darkecha, your ways. So here we have, your ways belong to what's totally transcendent human experience. And we can remember in this book 3 of the Psalms, it started with Psalm 73, where the psalmist was also in front of the scandal of seeing that those who were seemingly strangers to God were doing well, whereas he was in pains. And but then he entered into the holy place, it's said in verse 73. And here it's belonging to holiness are your ways. So I enter into this new perspective, which is inside a opening up to God's holiness, to a transcendent presence of God, leading further than human understanding. Thus, I can explain myself in the second part of verse 14.
מי אל גדול כאלוהים?
Who is the El Gadol, great as Elohim? And I expand in verse 15.
אתה האל עושה פלא.
You are the El who does wonders. And the Phile is the word used, for example, all the wonders that God did in Egypt so as to bring his people out of Egypt into and cross the Dead Sea and take them on the way to the land of milk and honey through the desert. So, and then the second part of verse 15.
הודעת בעמים עוזך.
You make known among the nations your might. And so it's you are not revealing yourself only to me, only to the holy people, right? But you make known universally, right? Your might, and in Hebrew it's uzecha, and for the one who reads, for example, the Psalms, you think of Psalm 32, verse 8, right? Where, arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you in the ark of your might, Aron Uzecha. So the Ark of the Covenant is sort of the expression of God's might among us. You make known among the nations your might, and it can be interpreted with the Hebrew, is the ark of your might, the ark of your covenant, this which is going to become the very heart of the sanctuary of the temple of Jerusalem. And so you are bringing forth this secret of secrets among the nations. And thus we get a new development in verse 16 where what is the role of your people? So let's listen to it.
גאלת בזרוע עמך, בני יעקב ויוסף.
You redeem with an outstretched arm your people, the sons of Jacob and of Joseph. So what does this, right? You redeem, so it's through your people, right, that you redeem, and the sons of Jacob, Joseph. So who's Joseph? Joseph is one of the sons of Jacob. So what does the sons of Jacob and of Joseph mean? It's putting them together. It clearly says it's not about the physical descendants of Jacob, of his 12 sons that made the 12 tribes of Israel, and their sons, but it's a spiritual posterity of Jacob, the great figure of the one who is challenged by God, but brought to God, by God, to this place where he precisely sees the ladder joining earth to heaven. And so it's the one that through the challenges is brought to this transcendent relationship with God. And who is Joseph? Joseph is the one who prophesizes Jesus' forsakenness by being sold by his brothers to Egypt, but thus bringing forth the salvation of his people. And so it's two forms of posterity where God, through great challenges, brings forth the pioneers of redemption, of the work of redemption. So you redeem through these pioneers who have accepted different forms of forsakenness, but been led to God into marvelous instruments of his redemption. And so there we have the third time in the psalm,
סלע.
Selah. Stop here and meditate on this. And I've already said a number of times, Selah is exactly the same word as with the same letters as the ladder which Jacob saw that joins heaven and earth. So take a time of silence, and all these silences are opening us to this open relationship of earth to heaven and heaven to earth. So, but there's another dimension with the waters, and here in verse 17, another dimension of how God is working with forsakenness. Well, waters, we saw that my hands are poured out like water, right? And waters, by definition, what we cannot seize, what slips out of us, right? And and the waters are also the waters of where we can drown, the dangerous waters. So, what do we have here? Let's listen to verse 17.
ראו כמים אלוהים, ראו כמים יאכילו.
Okay. So we have again a repetition, this psalm of the waters behold your face, the waters behold your face. Huh? And so this is another, it's the waters which are what contains this beyond the experience of forsakenness. And they behold your face. So in Hebrew, it's raucha. And in other words, they contemplate your face. They are, it's inside this, what is unseizable, that there's this contemplation of your face, Olim, and a contemplation which is, in the second part, right, it's the waters behold your face, they live the pangs of birth. In Hebrew, it's yahilu. They are, and it's this living the pangs of birth. They are, it's the waters which are bringing new life. And we can think of this marvelous image of what a child is, right, formed in the waters of the womb of the mother, right, and bring forth into birth. And so this is where this is our the proper place inside this experience of forsakenness. And it finishes with this little expression,
אף ירגזו תהומות.
Af, the utter depths tremble. So it's the darkest, it's not only the waters, but also what is darkest. It is under this encounter with God. And yet, it has another facet, which is the beginning of verse 18.
זורמו מים עבות.
So, Amot is the clouds, right? Zoru, they send a flood of water. They flush water. And so, there's the waters, not only the waters below, but the waters above. And we're surrounded by this circumstances of water, of what is precisely where our human power and our human hold is at a loss. That God's revelation is working, is bringing birth. And then we're going to have, with the end of verse 18 and verse 19, you can see we're going to have twice a voice. In Hebrew, it's kol, kol. We're going to hear that twice. The psalm started with koli, koli. My voice, my voice. It was the first words of this psalm. And the end of the psalm, it's kol, kol. A voice. And behind it, we could say the voice. And we could think the voice of God. Maybe that would be, I should have put the voice, but but the Hebrews say it's this mysterious voice which comes out from the waters, from the, right? So this voice. So let's listen to it
קול נתנו שחקים,
So, a voice is given out in the heavens. And so there's this, here comes the answer, right? That I've been looking for at the first part of the psalm, where I really received a God who had his ear inclined towards me, but there was no response to my very intense request to him for his help. So a voice is given out in the heavens. And the comment of this is,
אף חצציך יתהלכו.
yes, yeah, your arrows flash to and fro. And so you are sending this, you are battling and with the whole strength of a warrior, right? Through your voice given out of heaven. But then we have the second. What is this battle all about? Let's listen to verse 19.
קול רעמך בגלגל.
A voice of your thunder in the whirlwind. So you are bringing this thunder and whirlwind that is unsettling for our humanities. But what do we have with that? Let's listen to what follows.
האירו ברקים תבל.
Bolts of lightning lighten up humankind. So here, through this great battle you engaged, you are bringing light to all humankind. And
רגזה ותרעש הארץ.
well, Aretz is the earth, Ragza and Tirza. The words quakes and trembles. Everything which is the solidity around our human experience quakes and trembles. So all this was sort of sandwiched in this. The clouds send a flood of water, and the word zormu for send a flood, right? It's the rainstorm water, right? And for example, in the prophet Habakkuk, we can understand what's behind all these words which we've just been reading, verse 18 and 19. The rainstorm of water swept on, you went forth for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. So it's the waters which are bringing forth the awaited for response of my experience of forsakenness, and bring forth salvation, redemption. And so the very end of the psalm give us, we could say, a moment where the psalmist, in his contemplation of God, is completely immersed in what God does, and comes to be pacified in letting himself simply be magnetized by God's unique words. So what we have in verse 20,
בים דרכך.
Bayam, and Yam is very close to water in Hebrew, right? We had waters above, Mayim, and Yam, it's almost, it's the same letters, but, and so in the waters are your ways, in the sea are your ways. And this is the famous way, the way of God, right? Are you going to follow the way of God? And then you have,
ושבילך במים רבים.
and your path in Rabim, in the great waters, in the multiple waters. So I am in front of a God who is going to open up to me beyond the experience of forsakenness through the waters. But how is that? And then there's this great line of this psalm at the end of verse 20.
ועקבותיך לא נודעו.
And your footsteps, right? The traces of your foot are not to be known. So this is a very, very beautiful expression, which is one of the great moments of the whole Psalter. Your footsteps are not to be known. And they take up in Isaiah chapter 51. It's behind it is the experience of coming out of Egypt, which is summed up in Isaiah, in the second Isaiah. You made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over. And I put a question mark. I think is that not what you did, right? Oh God, for Isaiah. There's the depths of the sea are the way of God. So this is the great lesson of this psalm. And then the book of wisdom, chapter 14 has, you have given a path in the sea so that without effort they arrive. So it's no longer according to my efforts that my prayer is answered. And thus with verse 21,
נחית חצון עמך.
Nachita, you shepherd as a flock your people. And
ביד משה ואהרון.
by the hand of Moses and Aaron. So you have your choice, we could say, priests and guides to lead your people, to shepherd your people on this marvelous way that goes beyond our forsakenness. So with this Psalm 77, we have finished a first group of Psalm 73 to 77 in Book 3. And basically they're all Psalms around the fact that if I just stay inside the present moment, I'm in front of failure and incomprehensibility. But I am to open up to the very beginnings, origin, and all the way to eschatology. And they are bringing me a new understanding of the present, which is a divine understanding of the present. So this is the first great movement, Psalm 73 to 77, of our Book 3 of the Psalter. I don't know if there are any questions. This is more a psalm which requires to accept its difficult verses as ones to lead us further than our spontaneous understanding into the waters of salvation. So let me bless you with the last words of the psalm, right? That your footsteps are not to be known, you who shepherd as a flock your people, by the hand of Moses and Aaron, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So God bless you all.